As a producer, I assume you're always working on songs, so is there a certain point when you start thinking, okay, now I'm going to write songs for the next record, or now is it very purposeful in that way?
There was this time,
Okay.
because things kind of since Swim have been so busy. We toured for an entire year right after Swim came out, and then I had a daughter, and that took up my time for a while, and still does, obviously. And then the Daphni record came out, and I was doing more DJing, and then we did the tour with Radiohead, and so it was after that it was like so many things had happened, so much time had passed. I thought, well, I really wanted to make another Caribou record. I really wanted to start doing that, and I thought, I've got to stop everything else, otherwise it's never going to happen. It's just going to, these fun things keep coming up and I keep doing them, but if I don't stop everything else and like purposefully, like you say, work on it, then it's never going to happen. So that was like, what, 2 years ago or something like that, I guess? No, not even, yeah, almost 2 years ago. Yeah.
And do you then start from scratch, or do you have ideas that you've worked on previously that have lingered?
Yeah, this time I had a few ideas because it had been such a long period, even before I got started in earnest on it. So I came back to a few things and that ended up on the record, and then a bunch of things that, that came together much later or started much later.
Do you remember which one was the first that ended up on the record?
The first one that ended up on the record, and this is actually probably pretty telling, is the track Mars, which is the most Daphni sounding one. It's the one that could have gone either way. And something about it, I just thought about the kind of Baroque kind of flute part, or something about it just made me think I should keep this and see if it relates to the Daphni stuff that to the Caribou stuff I'm gonna make later. And so that was the first one. Other early ones, the track Second Chance with Jesse, I had for ages. I had the kind of instrumental synthesizer loop. I had no idea what to do with the track until Jesse Lanza wrote the melody and wrote the lyric and all that kind of stuff. And that was like a year later, probably, that turned into that track that it is now.
As a producer, and I ask this to a lot of producers, is it difficult to know when to stop tinkering and a song is finished?
I don't have that problem actually that much. I mean, usually the songs aren't finished because there's a big hole where there should be a chorus, and I don't know what the chorus should be, or usually the best guide for me is, aside from people's advice, and I'm always asking my wife and Kieran and other friends to give me advice on what does this sound like to you? Does it sound finished? Does it sound like it needs something else? But the other best guide is just time and if I sit on something for a couple months and then I play it again, and if nothing bothers me about it, like, oh, that doesn't sound right, then usually that's it, it's finished, yeah.
And you mentioned the birth of your daughter. Has that changed your approach to the music, and especially lyrically?
Yeah, it's changed, I mean, a lot of things, It's changed even just down to the kind of rhythm of the way that I make the music. Now, I used to be kind of a workaholic. I'd just be in the studio all day, any free time I had. Now that's not possible anymore. It's about balancing my family life and my working life, and so I end up just going back and forth during a day, like a couple hours of work, and then a couple hours with my daughter, and then a couple hours and splitting my time like that. And I think that alone means that the kind of lyrical themes from the rest of my life and about my daughter and about my relationship with my wife and my family and my friends and all those things end up in the music, because it's all mixed up together, it's all happening all at the same time.
So it's a much more personal record in that way?
Yeah, very much so. In fact, Swim was the first album that started to have personal lyrics on it at all.
Okay.
Before that, it was just, fill in some words almost, sketch a kind of mood, but didn't have anything to do with me.
Why the change then around Swim?
Well, because when I look back at those previous records, a lot of things that I was proud of, like the musical content, the melodies, the sounds, but a couple things that I felt weren't quite right, and that was the fact that the lyrics didn't relate to me. If this is going to be my music and I'm going to look back at it and something in there doesn't have any relevance to me, that seems weird. And the other thing was, some of those previous records, I'm such a music fan, and a habit that I can get into is like trying to recreate some sound that I love. So the Andorra, the album previous to Swim, is very much me recreating the sound of the 1960s psychedelic kind of sound. And I thought, that's weird, but particularly because all those bands that I loved from the 60s, they were the most forward-looking people at the time. They were trying to make music that sounded contemporary or ahead of their time. So it seems weird to be trying to recreate something from the past. I wanted to make something that sounded more contemporary, but also more identifiable as me. Okay. Just make the music more personal to me in every way, the lyrics, the sonic quality, all that kind of stuff.
What was it, and then especially with this record, because you're opening up about your family, was it difficult to do?
I think because, I've been making music for 15 years almost now, or releasing music for 15 years, making music for much longer than that. It's just been a gradual building of confidence, you know what I mean? The same with my singing. I used to be much more hesitant about singing in public, singing on the records, all those kind of things. I would cover my voice with lots of reverb and echoes and things that would hide the imperfections or whatever, and now I'm just more comfortable with those kind of things, I think, and that confidence has meant that that kind of side of myself is easier to open up to.
Well, in terms of the lyrics, I wrote something down that I took off a bio, so I'm not sure if it's true, but that the lyrics were thoughts on mortality, loss, and letting go. Yeah,
I think that I feel like that relates almost equally to Swim. Okay. There's songs explicitly about my grandparents passing away and on that record, and with this record, it's kind of, I wanted, I'm at a point in my life where all those kind of relationships, not just with my wife, but my child, my family, people getting old and passing away, people getting sick, people getting divorced. It's such a complicated time. It's not like everybody's falling in love for the first time like it would have been 15 years ago. It's more like all those kind of emotions, all those kind of things are jumbled up together. The kind of experiences of love are all quite textured and contradictory and compromised and complicated. And so I wanted the lyrics that kind of captured as much of those things as possible. There aren't that many lyrics on the album. So there's some songs that are more narrative or expository, and there's some songs that are just more about catching a kind of phrase or almost like a mantra that repeats and captures more as much of the mood of my life at that time,
Do you notice then, because of these changes that happen in your life, do you notice then that musically as well, that songs take on a mood that you have at that moment, say with the passing of your grandparents, that you notice that the mood or that the music that you make at that point becomes sonically more gloomy?
Sure, absolutely. That's part of. It's not only a kind of cathartic thing, but sometimes that's the music is often the thing that I turn to kind of record that or to deal with that kind of thing or to celebrate that when things are good in my life. It's always the thing that I make sense of things via making music as part of the process of making sense of what's going on in my life.
Okay, and finally, when in the process did the title of the album pop up?
So, I recorded that song "Our Love" like about halfway through, and I was really struggling with finding a title. I kind of knew what the album was about, but it was just sitting there in front of me the whole time. It was when I recorded that song, I just turned on a microphone, and that was the first thing that came out of my mouth. And so, but it took me a while to see it there as the thing that kind of unites all the themes on the record, all the kind of also a feeling of wanting to make this record warm and generous and about sharing and about the people who are going to hear it, not just about me as well. Something more communal, more than just strictly about me. So I picked the title right at the end, but it had been sitting there all along.
When you wrote that song, then is that what you just mentioned? Is that a realization you make in hindsight, or is that you know at that point this is the song that kind of that's what I want to do, and that's where the songs should gravitate toward?
It's a very slow process of realizing, of making sense of it all. Like, especially because when I record these albums, 99% of the music that I make doesn't get used at all. You know, I'll record so many songs and use only, a tiny percentage of them. And so it's hard to see what's happening in some sense, and it's hard to make sense of it. And it's only the process of kind of sitting with it for a while and whittling it down to a smaller number of songs and getting opinions from friends and reflecting on it that makes some sense of it. So it's normally only at the end things kind of, come together and fit together right at the end.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. A pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.